Watch someone answer a question that only needed one word. Can you make Friday? No, and then it starts. The sister who's visiting, the trains, the week they've had, the last time they tried. Nobody asked for any of that. It keeps coming anyway. You've watched this at a desk. Someone declines a meeting, and instead of can't, sorry, you get 4 sentences of why, the clash, the deadline, the thing they promised someone else. The no was fine. The no was never the problem. It's the reply that's 3 times longer than the question. The so what happened was when nothing needs to have happened. The reason, and then the reason behind the reason, laid out like they're being marked on it. And watch the other person while it happens. They nodded at sentence 1. They believed it. They've already moved on in their head, and the explaining is still going, out past the point where anyone's still listening. So the tell isn't that they answered. It's that they couldn't stop answering. The question closed a long time ago, and they're still in there, stacking up reasons for a verdict nobody's waiting to give. So here's what the whole thing is really asking. Why would someone who's already been believed keep making the case? Why keep handing over evidence to a person who never once asked to see any? And before you call it nervous chatter, or just being honest, or talking too much, watch what they're doing with their hands. They're not filling silence. They're building something. Piece by piece, like it has to hold up. Because you only build a defense that carefully when some part of you is certain you're about to be accused. So what exactly do they think they're on trial for? Watch the shape of it, because it always runs the same way. First the plain answer. I can't. And for a normal exchange, that would be the whole thing. That's a complete sentence. But the plain answer sits there for half a second and it feels naked. Too short. Too bare. Like it'll be read as rude, or as a lie, or as hiding something. So they reach for the next piece. I can't, because, and now there's a reason. And the reason should be enough. But the reason feels thin on its own too, so here comes a second one to prop it up. And a third to prop up the second. Then the preemptive strike. And it's not that I don't want to, answering an accusation that nobody in the room has made. They're not defending against what was said. They're defending against what they're sure is being thought. Watch how much bigger the file gets the smaller the thing is. A genuine catastrophe, they'll tell you in one flat line. But declining a party? That comes with a full appendix. That's the giveaway right there, and it points the wrong way from what you'd expect. The more innocent the thing, the longer the explanation. Nobody over-justifies a real crime. They over-justify saying no to a coffee. Because a real crime, some part of them thinks, at least deserves defending. But this? This should have needed nothing. And the fact that they still feel they have to defend it is the whole thing screaming quietly underneath. So they keep laying it out. Route after route across the table, this road and that road, all the ways they ended up at a perfectly ordinary answer. Here's why. And here's why that. And here's why you shouldn't hold any of it against me. And the person across from them just wanted to know if they were free on Friday. Now here's what rules out the easy answer, they're just thorough one. Watch what happens when you tell them, out loud, halfway through, honestly, it's fine, you don't have to explain. It doesn't stop. If anything it speeds up. No, I know, I just want you to understand that, and a whole new stretch of explaining gets built on the far side of your reassurance. Which is strange, if the goal was to be believed, because you just told them they were. The reassurance should have switched it off. It didn't touch it. Which means being believed was never actually the target. The person in the room saying, it's fine, isn't who they're talking to. They're looking at you, but they're answering someone else. Someone who isn't at the table. Someone who isn't even in the building. So the explaining isn't aimed at the coffee, or the meeting, or Friday. It's testimony. It's being read into a record, for a judge who left the room years ago and took the whole court with them. And you can catch the moment the real audience appears. Mention one particular person, a mother, a boss, an ex, and watch the explaining pick up before that person has done a single thing. The court just walked back in. So the question was never, can I convince the person in front of me? It's older than that. It's, can I finally build a case so complete that nobody can ever call me guilty again? And to see who first put them on trial, you have to go back to the earliest rooms they ever had to defend themselves in. So picture a house where a plain answer was never allowed to just stand. Where no, on its own was treated as a door slammed in someone's face, and had to be paid for with reasons. A kid says, I don't want to. And the room goes cold. That's not a reason. Why don't you want to? Give me an actual reason. And the kid, 6 years old, starts learning to build a case. Every plain thing they said got cross-examined. Why? Why though? That doesn't make sense. Explain it properly. Until a bare sentence started to feel like standing in front of a class with nothing prepared. So the kid learned. Never come with just the answer. Come with the answer and the evidence and the backup and the pre-written defense, because the answer alone will get torn apart every single time. And there's a second version of this house, and it's quieter, and in some ways it cuts deeper. It's the house where the plain truth got called a lie. The kid says, "I didn't do it." And that should be the end. But the face across from them doesn't buy it. "Are you sure?" Then how do you explain? And suddenly the truth needs corroborating, like it's not enough to just be true. So the kid learns the most warping lesson there is. Being honest is not sufficient. You can be completely telling the truth and still lose, unless you can prove it. So you'd better start collecting proof for everything, all the time. Both houses teach the same trade in the end. Your word is not enough on its own. Your word has to arrive with a lawyer. A plain answer is an unlocked door, and unlocked doors, in these houses, get kicked in. And a kid who learns that doesn't just learn it for the kitchen. They carry the whole courtroom out into the world with them. Set it up in every room they ever walk into after. So now they're grown, and someone perfectly kind asks a perfectly small question, and the old court snaps to order before they've even finished. All rise. And out come the papers. They're not being difficult. They're not even choosing it. It's the fastest, oldest reflex they own. Get your evidence out before the accusation lands, because in the rooms that made you, the accusation always landed. And here's the cruelest part of the wiring. The people who cross-examined them the hardest were usually the people they most needed to be believed by. So the reflex is welded directly onto love. Which means the explaining isn't really them being careful. It's them, at 9 years old, still trying to hand up enough proof to a face that already decided they were guilty. So watch a grown adult over-explain, and slow it down, and you'll see it. The pace of someone who has been interrupted 1,000 times and is trying to get it all in before the axe comes down. Get it all out now. Every reason. Every angle. Cover every exit before they can close one. Because a bare answer got you convicted 100 times, and you swore you'd never stand there defenseless again. That's the wound, wearing a very reasonable-looking coat. It doesn't look like fear. It looks like being thorough. It looks like being honest. It looks like anything except a kid who was never once allowed to just be believed. Now here's the part that gives the whole thing away, the same way it always does. They don't do it with everyone. Watch them with a stranger. A shop assistant, someone on a train, a person they'll never see again asks why they're not buying the thing. Just looking, thanks. Clean. One line. Done. No file. No appendix. No dossier, because it doesn't matter what a stranger thinks. There's no sentence coming. There's no court. A stranger can believe them or not, the room closes and they'll never be in it again. Then put that exact same person at their parents' dinner table, or in front of the partner whose opinion is load-bearing, and ask them the smallest thing. Why they're a bit quiet tonight. And it fires. Instantly. Full paperwork. Same tiny question. Wildly different response. Which tells you it was never about the question at all. It's about who's asking, and what it would cost you if they decided against you. It only ever fires in the rooms where a verdict would actually land on you. The people who can't really judge you get the plain answer. The people who can, they get the whole trial. Because a stranger's judgment is a door you were never staying behind anyway. But your mother's? Your partner's? The friend you actually need? If they find you guilty, that verdict follows you home and gets into the bed. So the size of the explanation is a map of exactly who you're afraid of. Show me who you over-explain to, and I'll show you whose disapproval you've never once stopped bracing for. And the ones who get the shortest answers aren't always the ones you trust the most. Sometimes they're the ones you've already given up on being believed by. You don't build a case for a court you've stopped hoping to win. So the explaining, strangely, is a form of hope. It only shows up where they still desperately want the verdict to come back innocent. It's ugly, and exhausting, and it's love with its hands full of paper. Which would almost be sweet, if it worked. But here's the thing nobody ever warns them about. It doesn't. It does the exact opposite. Because watch what over-explaining does to the person on the other end of it. The reasons don't make them more convinced. Past a certain point, the pile starts to look like a confession. There's a threshold, and every over-explainer sails right past it. 1 reason reads as an answer. 2 reads as honesty. But 5 reasons for skipping a coffee reads as, what are you actually hiding? The very thoroughness they built to prove their innocence is the thing that plants the doubt. Nobody lays out this much evidence for something that didn't need defending. The defense creates the crime. So the listener starts to wonder. Why are they telling me all this? What's the real reason underneath? And now, for the first time, there actually is a suspicion in the room, one the explaining put there itself. And the over-explainer feels that suspicion land. Feels the other person cooling, pulling back. And they read it exactly the wrong way. See, they don't believe me. I haven't explained enough yet. So they add more. And the more they add, the guiltier they look, and the guiltier they look, the more they add. The defense feeds the very suspicion it was built to kill. It's a loop that tightens with every turn. And from the inside it never feels like the loop is the problem. It only ever feels like, I still haven't found the one reason that will finally make them stop doubting me. And the people around them slowly learn something without ever deciding to. That asking this person a simple question gets you a courtroom you didn't ask to sit in. So they stop asking. They keep the questions smaller and rarer. They stop opening things up. Because every open question comes back as a case file, and nobody has the evening for a trial over what's for dinner. So the person who overexplained to keep from being abandoned in the courtroom, ends up alone in it anyway. Every reason perfectly filed. The gallery completely empty. Now here's where you should stop, because you have done a version of this. Not with everyone. But there's a text on your phone right now that was 3 times longer than it needed to be. The message where you explained why you were running 10 minutes late, and then explained the traffic, and then explained why you left when you did, to someone who only said, no worries, see you soon. Sorry, it's just that, you typed out for something nobody was upset about. The reason you gave before anyone asked for one. The apology attached to a thing that was never a crime. And if you look at when you do it, not with everyone, only with the certain few whose disappointment would actually wreck your week, you'll find the same courtroom they have. Just with fewer papers. There's one person you still overexplain to. You could name them right now. And it's not a coincidence that they're also the one who's plain, okay, can flatten your whole afternoon. And somewhere behind them, if you follow the road all the way back, there's an earlier room. A face that made you feel like your plain word was never going to be enough on its own. That's the person the paperwork was always really for. Not the one in front of you now. The one who taught you, a long time ago, that being believed was something you had to earn with a stack of proof. And here's the quiet, difficult thing underneath all of it. The people worth keeping don't need the file. They believed you at sentence 1. The explaining was never for them, and it never reached them. So the pattern was never really about explaining. It's about a kid who stood in a room and told the truth and watched it not be enough, and swore they'd never stand there with empty hands again. So somewhere tomorrow, someone's going to ask you something small, and you'll feel the old reflex reach for the paperwork before the question's even finished. And now you'll know what it is. It's not rudeness you're avoiding. It's a courtroom you've been carrying since you were 9, with one empty chair in it you're still, after all this time, trying to convince.